Hi, everyone. So my talk is dedicated to men, but also to the women inside the room, obviously. So dear men, we need to talk. We need to talk about what it means to be a man. Because I think that you deserve better. And I think that things need to change. Women, we got our own revolution, right? We still have work to do. But largely, we found direction through that revolution. And I think that men need a revolution too, but I think that their revolution, they need to get a little bit lost in it. So why should you listen to me, right? Why would you need to change anything about the way that you are doing things right now? Men have power, men have influence, men have money, and you pee standing up, like you have everything. And why would you listen to a woman? And you have a point. Sorry, I forgot to put my first slide. And you have a point. I only make 77 cents to your dollar. My gender is hardly represented in our Congress. And frankly, I don't even know what a 401k is yet, and no one tell my mom, please. I also store bras in my fridge and shoes in my oven. That is how much of my life I have together. And so, yeah, you shouldn't take a lot of advice from me. But there is one thing that I am good at, and that is thinking about gender and gender expectations that we have about women. I've spent the most of the 5 last years thinking and speaking and doing videos about what it means to be a woman and what kinds of expectations that we place on women. And many other women have been doing that too. Many other women who do not store bras in their fridge, like Beyonce and like Sheryl Sandberg. And they've largely disagreed, right, about what it means to be a woman. And a lot of people think that that was a weakness of the feminist movement. But I think that that was the strength of the feminist movement. The feminist movement didn't tell women, you all have to be high-powered CEOs at a Silicon Valley company. Feminism didn't tell women, you all have to be the best mom that cooks brownies for her kids every Friday night. Feminism told women that they could choose one of those things, or that they could choose to be both of those things, or that they could choose to be neither of those things. But those conversations were difficult, right? Is Beyonce's feminism relatable to a woman who's asexual, or to a woman who's a Christian conservative? Probably not. Is Sheryl Sandberg's feminism, that's more corporate feminism, relatable to an immigrant who takes care of the children of the mom who reads Lean In? Maybe not. But these conversations were so important because they allowed us to rethink our roles as women. And I think that men need to do that too. But here's the problem. What's the worst thing? What's the most emasculating thing that a man can do? Get lost, right? Ask for directions. So if men can't ask for directions to the closest gas station, how the hell are they supposed to ask directions about how to be men? So how do I know this? I did my own little social experiment, because I love doing those. I went to Washington Square Park in New York City with a chair and a table and a simple sign that read, "Free advice for men from a woman." And I went with my friend Esther Perel because she has a lot of good advice to give out. I, on the other hand, not so much. And so she is a speaker, TED speaker, world-renowned therapist, psychologist, and scholar. And I was very interested in what these men were going to ask us. But I was also very interested in asking them one question. And that question was, what's hard about being a man? And the men who seemed to know exactly where they were going that day suddenly got a little bit lost. And a lot of them had never even began to think about that question at all. And in a way, they did exactly what they were taught to do, which is never ask for directions. I took away 2 really important things from the conversations that I had with these men. And I talked with men of all ages, of all cultural backgrounds. That's a great thing about New York City. And so when I asked them what was hard about being a man, what was hard about being a man wasn't women. It was actually other men. So what came up again and again and again in these conversations was that men felt a pressure to perform their masculinity, not in front of women, in front of men. And that's actually a phenomenon that's supported by a theory that's called precarious masculinity. And it's a theory basically that states that as women, our, femininity is kind of, assumed. So we can wear pants and leather jackets and, wear a tuxedo to a wedding and it's kind of cool. But we can we can bend gender norms a little bit. Men don't have that luxury. Real men don't wear dresses. Real men don't wear makeup. Real men don't act like women, right? And that is very constraining for men. And in a way, the best image that I could come up with to describe masculinity is an inflatable donut. So masculinity, or trying to be a man, for men, is trying to inflate an inflatable donut that has a hole into it. And trying to inflate it, and basically you have to keep blowing into it to maintain the illusion that it's not flawed. But basically, however much you blow into it, you will never be able to maintain it. So masculinity is that broken donut, inflatable donut, and we need to fix it. The second thing that was a theme was that all of these men had all of these worries and insecurities and were coming to us with them. And when I asked them if they'd ever talked about these things to men inside their lives, most of them said no. So there's one simple solution to a very complicated problem, which is men have to talk to each other. But the way that men talk to each other is also problematic. So if you think about friendship, there are many studies, obviously men have friends, women have friends, but they experience friendships in different ways. Men's friendships are less in depth than they are for women, and they're less long-lived. There's really interesting studies on married men, for example, that shows that as they age, they become increasingly isolated, and we just don't see that same phenomenon with women. And there's really interesting surveys also coming out of the UK showing that there's actually 2.5 million men living in the UK right now with no close friends. No wonder when two men hang out and have dinner at an Italian restaurant on a Friday night, we have to call that a bromance, right? That there's something that's wrong with two men just hanging out platonically and having an intimate, in-depth conversation or friendship. We have to label it as somehow being romantic. But the crisis in masculinity will not be solved by men just going out to see romantic comedies on Saturday afternoons together. We have to also think about what happens when men do assemble in male spaces. And male spaces, unfortunately, sometimes can be threatening to women, but I think that they can also be threatening to men. If we think about our presidential campaign, right? For the first time in election history, we've had a major candidate of a major party defend the idea that it is okay for men to brag about sexual assault when they are together. We had his spouse call it boy talk, and he described it as locker room talk. I don't think that we should be teaching men to be boys. I think that we should be teaching boys to become better men. And I think that we do that by allowing men to reclaim those male spaces. Those male spaces shouldn't be places where men have to brag about doing illegal things or brag about all of the great things that they can do or the things that they say that they can do. They should be spaces where men can ask questions, where men can ask for direction, and where instead of having to always appear strong, can appear weak. Where they can ask questions instead of pretending to always have the answers. And I get that that's risky. I get that that can feel frightening. But I think that the worst thing that you can do is get a little lost. And maybe that's exactly what men have to do. Thank you.